Today we're looking at a review of lessons 1-1, 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, and 1-4. This is for geometry. So I've drawn a figure here, and I've labeled it with points and also with labels for the lines. And it's going to ask you a few questions here. So it says for questions 1 through 3, the next 3 questions we're going to use that figure. So I'm going to be bouncing back and forth. So what is another name for line L? If we look at the figure, line L is here. So line L has points E, B, and C. And for any line, you're going to use at least 2 points. So you could use BC, you could use EB, you could use EC, okay, any combination of 2 points on that line. And then for a line, unless you write the word line next to it, the label needs to be with an arrow over top of the 2 letters and 2 arrows pointing in either direction. Name the intersection of lines L and M. If we look at the figure again, that is going to be this line and this line. So where do they intersect? They're going to intersect at a point, which is going to be point B. So 2 lines always intersect at a point. You don't need to write point. You can just put capital B, and that will indicate point B. And then the last one for this figure is collinear points. So you need to name 3 collinear points, and that can be any 3 points as long as they're on the same line. So you could do A, B, D, or you could do the other 3 points on the line, E, B, C. And actually, notice I separated those 3 with a comma. You're going to want to do that when you're listing points, because if you don't separate them, it's going to look like you're labeling a plane. So this is A, comma, B, comma, D. So either one of those sets you could say as collinear points. They're on the same line. Moving on, you're going to have one of the questions on the quiz is going to have a ruler provided, such as this one, and you're going to have to give me the exact measure based on what the ruler says. So in this case, finding the length of AB, I need to write down what the length would be in exact terms. So if you look here, notice that there's 4 marks in between each number, so that means each mark is going to represent a quarter. Okay, 1/4. So if it stops at the first mark after the 2, that means I would put as my answer 2 and 1/4. And it says inches, so I'm going to label it with inches. Find the length of XY if Y is between X and W. So with these, I would strongly recommend drawing this out. So if you have
Lindy?
So you are going to draw this out. So it says Y is between X and W. So I'm going to label as Y between X and W. These are points. Okay, so if we look here, I'm going to do some more labeling as the parts are explained. So this says XW is 15.7. That's the whole thing. And VW is 8.9. Oh, not VW, XW. Or, I mean, sorry, XY is 8.9. I wrote that wrong. So, XY is 8.9. That's going to be here. So in order to find the length of xy, you know what? I think I messed myself up with these letters. Hold on. Okay, don't get confused. Let's back up here. I meant to say YW. That was the problem. Okay, so YW, if we go back here, YW is 8.9. Okay, so let's start over. We have X and W. Y is between X and W, so we labeled that. Then we're given XW, which is the total, 15.7. Then we're given WY, which is here, and that's 8.9. Now we're finding XY. So all we need to do is subtract, because we have the total, 15.7, minus part of the total, 8.9, will give us the other part, which is xy. So 15.7 minus 8.9 is going to be our answer, which is 6.8. So the answer for xy is going to be 6.8 centimeters. Okay, next one is going to be similar. This one says find the value of x if xy equals 22, and they've also labeled parts of this line. So if we label xy as 22, we can use all this information here to be able to find what x is. So if you look here, you have two segments that add up to be one segment, a total. So you have xw and then wy to add up to be xy. So we can just set up our equation the exact same way. So we would have 2x minus 2 plus 8 equals xy, which is 22. And then we would combine like terms here. We get 2x plus 6 equals 22, and solve for x. So 2x equals 16, and x would be 8. And that's all it was asking us here for this question, just find the value of x. Next one, we're finding the length of AC, and again, this one I would draw out. So it says B is between A and C. And then we have, whoops, we're going to assume that's a straight line. Okay, so we label what we're given. AB equals 5x minus 7. BC equals 12. And AC equals 8x minus 5. And if we're trying to find AC, we also need to find x first. So we're going to do very much like we just did for the last problem. We're going to combine AB plus BC and put it equal to the total AC. So 5x minus 7 plus 12 equals 8x minus 5. And that's how we're going to solve for x. So combine like terms, 5x plus 5 equals 8x minus 5. So I'm going to combine like terms. And that becomes 5x plus 10 equals 8x. We ran out of room here. So 5x plus 10 equals 8x. We'll keep solving. Got to bring the like terms again over. So now we have 10 equals 3x. And that's going to end up giving us a fraction, which is going to be 10 over 3. If it's a fraction as your answer, that's fine. Just make sure it's in simplified form. I would not change it to be a decimal. I would just leave it as 10 over 3. And that's going to be x. Now, It also asked you to find AC, so we're going to have to plug in 10 over 3 into 8x minus 5, which is what represented AC. So, give myself some room here. X was 10 over 3, so let's plug that into 8x minus 5. So we have 8 times 10 over 3 minus 5, which becomes 80 over 3 minus 5. We need a common denominator when working with fractions, so we have 80 over 3 minus 15 over 3, which gives me 65 over 3. And you can keep that as your answer as well. So x would be 10 over 3, and then AC would be 65 over 3. Next one, you're finding the value of x if AB is congruent to CD. That's what this symbol means. So AB is given to us in terms of x, so 8x minus 5 equals CD is how you're going to set that up, because congruent means the same. So you put them equal to each other and solve for x. So we get 8x equals 32, or x would be 4. And that's all it asks us to find. Next one, which of the following is not an undefined term in geometry? Well, there's 3 undefined terms. That's a point, a plane, and a line. So if it's any of those, then those are undefined, so that gives us the only option is angle. Here we're going to work with midpoint and distance. So this one's the coordinates of the midpoint. The midpoint formula is written as a point, but you have x coordinates added up, divided by 2, comma, y coordinates added up, divided by 2. So we have 4 and 5 is our x coordinates, so 4 plus 5 over 2, comma, 7 plus 8. Those are our y coordinates over 2. And we simplify that to be 9 over 2, you can leave it as a fraction, comma, 15 over 2. And again, you could leave it as a fraction. So that would be your midpoint. The coordinates of D if E is the midpoint. This one is using the midpoint formula, but we're solving in order to find the other point. So we're not actually finding the midpoint, they give it to us. But we use the midpoint formula to solve to find the end point. So it says E is the midpoint. So it gives us C, and it gives us E. Okay, so we need to find D. So if we set it up with the midpoint formula, we have our x values, which is -1, plus our other x value, which we don't know, so we put it as x over 2. And that's going to be equal to the midpoint x, which is 0. So we use that to solve for x. So we're going to solve by multiplying by 2 first. And that gives us -1 plus x equals 0. And then you have to add the 1. So we're adding 1. So x would be 1. Then we need to do the same thing for our y-coordinate. So we're going to take our y-coordinate for C, which is 2. And we're going to add y, because we don't know the other y-coordinate for D. But we're going to put that equal to 3, which is our y-coordinate in our midpoint here. So we solve again, always the same solving when you're trying to find the end point. You always have to multiply by 2 first. Then you get 2 plus y equals 6. And then solve for y now by subtracting by 2. So y is 4. Okay, so my new point is going to be 1, 4. And that represents D. The next one, find the distance between A and B. This is using the distance formula. So we have, again, our x coordinates are subtracted and then squared, plus our y coordinates subtracted and then squared. And then our final step is going to do the square root of the whole thing. And you can actually leave the distance in terms of square root if you'd like. So we're going to plug in our x-coordinates. -4 minus 6, square them. Plug in our y-coordinates, 3 minus -5, and square them. It doesn't matter what order that you do your x-coordinates and your y-coordinates because you're going to square them anyway, so it's going to be positive either way. You get -4 minus 10, which is -10. -10 squared is 100. Then we keep going. 3 minus -5 ends up being 8. 3 plus 5. 8 squared is 64. So we get 64. Now we add that together and we have the square root of 164. And you can leave your answer like that. Now we're going to use, for the last couple problems, we're going to use this diagram. And it says, the first part we need to do is name a point in the exterior of angle ABC. So if I go back, ABC is going to be here. Oh, ABC. Okay, hold on again. I think I messed up my letters. Okay, now it is finished. Okay, so I meant to say angle BAC, not ABC. So the exterior of angle BAC is going to be here. There's BAC. So the exterior is going to be anything over here or over here. Okay? And then on the interior, if we extend our lines out even more, is going to be anything on this side, in between the two yellow lines. So exterior, we just need to name one point of the exterior. That could be either D or E in this case. So D or E could work. The interior points, if we were asked that, would be F, would be actually the most appropriate interior point, because G is actually on the line, or on the side of the angle, so that wouldn't count. So F would be the only interior point. And then the last question we have is the angle ACD that we need to find. So it tells us that CD bisects ACE, which means that CD, right here, is going to cut ACE into two equal parts. This one and this one. Then it says ACD is 2y plus 9. So ACD here, 2y plus 9. DCE is 4y plus 3. That's going to be here. So we need to find ACD. Or I'm sorry. Yeah, ACD. Okay, and then it says that we already determined that the two parts that I just labeled were equal. So we need to find y first and then plug in y for ACD. So let's put them equal to each other, because with CD bisecting the angle, that makes two equal parts. And we're solving for y. So we get 9 equals 2y plus 3. Keep solving. So 2y equals 6, and then y would be 3. But that's not my answer. It says find the measure of ACD. So ACD, if we look back, was 2y plus 9. So we're going to plug in 3 for y and solve. So we get 15 for ACD. And that concludes our quiz review for lessons 1-1 to 1-4. This is geometry.